Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. We are going to speak about BIM in operations and facilities management. The webinar today is facilitated by the UKBIMA Alliance, and it's done in coordination with the UKBIMA Alliance West Midlands Group and the BIM for Estates Group. So we are using GoToWebinar today. If you can see this screen, you will be in listen-only mode, but you've got the opportunity to type questions here, and at the end of the webinar, we will be trying to answer some of them, as we'll have a short Q&A session. Please avoid the raise hand option, and after the event, we will have all the sessions recorded on and uploaded on the UKBIMA Alliance YouTube channel, so feel free to follow it. So, our agenda for the day. First, we'll start with an update from myself on BIM for Estates and our journey at Coventry University Estates. My name is Hadith Sadoun. I'm the chair of the UK BIM Alliance BIM for Estates regional group, and I work as a BIM manager for Coventry University Estates. Later, we'll hear from Jason Whittle, who is the chair of the West Midlands group. And then we've got Adam Holmes, head of estates planning at the University of York. Then we will have Karen Alford, who is the FCRM manager for the Digital Assets and Information at the Environment Agency. And then we will have Jonathan Stewart, Steve Batson, and Carl Redman, all from the BIM for Health group. So we've got an interesting mix of seminars and ready for today's topic on BIM in operations and facilities management. So a quick introduction on BIM for Estates group. We've started this group because we wanted to have a platform to share challenges on common themes that we face in estates. So as clients, owners, and operators of buildings, we face a lot of technical challenges, people challenges, and economical challenges. And we wanted to connect with other estates groups to speak about the challenges and find solutions and share solutions that can help us all to progress in our BIM implementation journey. We started with a lot of universities, as you see here, and a lot of our members have presented a lot on our previous events. And now we are expanding outside of the university community. As you see today, we've got presenters from the Environment Agency and also from the BIM for Health group who have the same digital estates vision that we do. So why BIM for Estates? It started from challenges that we've got at Coventry University. And that's how I started reaching out to other universities to understand what they are doing when they started implementing BIM. And we've got a complex estate. We've got a lot of data to manage. We've got a lot of documents, a lot of information, and a lot of stakeholders. And we want to add value by having better information management estates-wide to all of our teams that manage and operate our facilities. We started doing that by better data governance, by having proper asset information management requirements and exchange information requirements. That's for our projects and also the internal management of our assets and information. We also started by looking at our data sets and aim to have unified data sets. And that was mainly determined by the systems that we have. So we had to map our systems to the proper dataset fields and the industry standards that are being used in projects. So we have Planon as a CAFM system at the States. And as you see here, we created a mapping between Planon fields and the OCOB equivalent fields of asset data that come to us from projects, because we want the information to come in one form that is usable by Planon, our CAFM system. We've done the same for capturing our existing building assets. So we're using the same unified sheet to capture our existing fields. So our operation and maintenance managers are currently using the sheet to capture building, electrical, and mechanical assets. And we've got the same one also to capture faculty assets, so that everything is in one unified way system and in one unified set that can be then imported into the CAFM system Planon, and then we can manage and operate those information in a much better way. Those fields and data sets are relying on the industry maintenance standard, which is SFG20. So our estates maintainable asset list is based on the SFG20 requirements, which groups the assets by groups and provides codes for them so that we can know how to maintain them, and helps us to provide the industry recommended maintenance for those assets. So that's how we plan our preventive maintenance. And we, as you see, we use this via spreadsheets, and we can automate it via SFG20 tools that they've got now. But at the moment, this automation is limited because we've got some challenges with our warranty. Sometimes when a new asset is built and we get the asset information handed over and the operation maintenance manuals, the maintenance recommended in the warranty is different than the SFG20 recommendation. Let's say, for example, SFG20 recommends a certain asset to be maintained once every 6 months, but then the warranty states that it should be maintained once every 3 months. So it still needs that manual check from our operation maintenance managers before we can use those information. And that's how we try to look at the information before we import them to the system, before we assign BPMs on Planon, to ensure everything is compliant. Now, we are trying to make this smarter. As you've seen, it's very spreadsheet heavy, but we've created this list and mirrored it on our new common data environment, which is GliderBIM. So now we can use this and fill this on the system itself instead of using spreadsheet. And this will help us to capture the information online. Our suppliers can log in to the GliderBIM system, fill those sheets, and we will have it in Glider. And also we can get the information from the models, from Cody, and then we will have it also in the same format mapped to the Planon asset register fields. And that's a better, smarter way that will help us then integrate those fields from Glider into Planon and push the information automatically instead of the manual way that we've got at the moment, but that is still under development. So this will support our digital estates vision. We are continuously building and developing our digital campus, and we will have the information as you see here, not just in a model format, but we will have also the metadata related to those asset fields, and not just data, but also documents. So we'll be able to link the right documents, the operational maintenance manuals, to the right assets via our new system, which is the common data environment. So this is our overview of how we aim to use this system. We want to capture the information from projects and use it for asset information management, so from projects to AIM. And we want to link it and integrate it with Planon, our kind of facilities management system. We want to link it with our BMS system. And for the future, we would like to link it with our existing systems at the estates. So we want to have one central location to push information such as asset information, space information to our timetabling system, access control, security, and all of the other systems at the estate, so we can manage and operate our assets in a better way. And that will support our digital campus vision. So thank you very much. I will now hand over to my colleague, Jason Whittle, who will also present a case study for us. Over to you, Jason.
Thanks, Adil. Just bear with me whilst I share the correct screen. Bear with me. Okay, is that showing, Adil?
That's perfect, Jason.
Yes, it's showing. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I want to share with you today. Sorry, just turn off this so it runs smoother. So, I want to share with you today outcomes from an R&D project that we've been working on for the last, I suppose, 2 or 3 years now, which is being continually updated. And it's covering really a practical workflow to obtain usable data from BIM. So very quickly, just a little bit about myself. I'm a director at One Creative Environments. We're a multidisciplinary design practice covering all the major disciplines, and we are specialists in BIM deliverables, providing support for main contractors and supply chain, We are BIM Level 2 certified through the BRE, and also I chair the West Midlands region for the UKBIMA Alliance. So this kind of underpins really the whole purpose of this presentation, which is about BIM to FM. And I've got a quote here, and it's a bit general because it's from every conference that I think I've been to since 2011, which says, "And we can use all the information within the BIM model to generate savings and efficiencies through the operational phase." And we know that to be the intention, because all the standards say that that's why we're doing this for, so that we can get better information out of our models and use them in operation. So why is it so difficult to find the examples, or certainly I found it difficult to find the examples of how you actually put the data into the models, which data you put in there, and then crucially, how do you get it out, and where does it go, into what system? And so we started looking for real examples of that, and struggled. So we decided to do an R&D project, as I say, which is still ongoing, and it's been done in several stages, and we've just got a new update to that as well, which will be the end of this presentation. So this started really with a project that we worked on about, I guess, about five years ago now, which was Rathbone Square with Lend-Lease in London, and we'd done the modelling coordination of an amenities package. All the good stuff that we used BIM for in the construction phase, which was class detection, coordination, generating the drawings and the setting out. But really, it was about, we were always told anyway with the project, it was all about, it was the important part was embedding the data into this project. They were very specific in the data that they wanted. This is an extract from their BIM execution plan, which was extracted from the employees information requirement. And they were quite clear in the requirements that they needed for their data. They wanted all the items in red, so 14 different data sets for every single item on the project. And if you happen to be involved in a package that contained assets, which was generally defined as the M&E packages, then there was an additional 4 data sets that had to be applied to every component in there, which was the asset number, manufacturer, model number, and SFG20, which was the first time that we'd come across it. I know Hadil's mentioned it earlier. It's becoming pretty widespread now, the industry standard really for maintenance. But at the time, we didn't particularly know how that code would be used, but we were told that it was important to put it into the model, and we did. This is an extract from one of the from one of our models, and it shows a general component. Wasn't an M&E asset, but it shows how we'd applied all of the data to that particular component. I think I've clicked on a floor item there for the screen grab, something like that. Yeah, porcelain floor tile, and all the data was embedded. We were using IFCs on this project to restructure the data so that we could actually see which data was applied to all the objects in Navisworks. If anybody uses Revit and Navisworks, when you bring the models into Navisworks, the data kind of gets splattered everywhere and you can't really find it in nice neat boxes. So we were using IFCs to restructure data so it was coming in nice neat tabs. And the structured data really does help when you're doing class detection coordination on the site. Helps with quantity takeoff as well, because if you've got a uniclass reference, then you can start to filter systems, components, types of things, and then start to do takeoffs and help with procurement and check scope overlaps, that sort of thing. But where we never ever saw was where this data ended up. We submitted models, they were audited and checked, they were validated, they seemed happy, but we never ever saw where this data was used or went to. I did later find out that I don't think it was actually used for anything, or certainly not used yet on this project, and that was the frustration. So we're talking to BIMA, who owned the SFG20 codes, and we were talking about their codes being embedded in models, and we, like everybody else, had assumed that it was just an easy process to issue them the model. Okay, the model we know is full of the data. We'll send it to you. Why not? And we can do an R&D project between us just to try and experiment kind of how these things come through. So if you're not familiar with SFG20, as Hadil touched on, it is basically the industry standard for maintenance. It does cover mostly mechanical, electrical assets because they tend to be the ones that are maintenance heavy, but it does also extend further into structural and architectural items as well, things like door closers and that sort of thing that aren't strictly M&E but may need some maintenance doing to them. And we did the joint research project. This is the SFG20 code listings. It's pretty dry. They are just referenced codes that link to every item that you can think of and their maintenance. They also do HTM aligned version, so that if you're working on healthcare projects, they also reference the HTM standards as well, which are really important in healthcare environments. Their mantra as well is that best practices in building maintenance and operations, basically maintain your systems, otherwise you are going to suffer from loss in efficiency. So we all talk about BIM targeting 20% savings or 33% savings, whichever phase you're looking at through the life cycle. If you're not maintaining your assets, you're already at a disadvantage because your assets aren't going to run as efficiently if they're not being maintained. And that kind of underpins SFG20. Really. This is what it looks like if you go into the SFG20 codes. It used to be based on a like a hard copy file-based system, but has now moved into a cloud-based system. And as you click on assets, I mean, here there's a chemical dosing unit, and it takes you through the maintenance. So it tells you what you need to do on a one monthly basis, 3 monthly, 6 monthly. It tells you why you're doing it and what you need to do and which skill sets you need to do. So it gives you a really good idea if you're a building owner, maintainer, as to what you need to do. And as Hadil said, they are editable, they are changeable if you need to do risk assessments and under or over maintain something at your discretion. So for the initial R&D project, the first one, we took a plant room from that Rathbone Square project, and this was a swimming pool plant room. We embedded the SFG20 codes into it, and as you can see here, this is where we put the data. This happened to be, you see here I've clicked on a swimming pool filter, and there's its correct SFG20 code there. We send that over to BIMA, and they couldn't use it. We had a model full of data, full of their codes, and their initial response was, well, we can't use it. It's just not being recognised by our system. And this was a real light bulb moment for me, and I think this now starts to paint the picture as to why we see so few examples out in the industry of taking data to asset management systems. We see plenty of examples of models full of data, and we're actually starting to see examples of CAFM systems with data in them, but you don't really get to see that exchange process. And I believe it's because it's not easy. And this is what our R&D project uncovered, really, that just because you have data in a model, there's absolutely no guarantee that it will work, because it didn't. So we needed to create a new workflow to enable the data that was in the model to be able to be recognized by the SFG20 system. So for this, it got a bit above our knowledge, because we needed to involve experts from Northumbria University who are very familiar with the XBIM platform. So XBIM is a kind of like an interface between different systems that allow them to talk to each other. And between ourselves, BIMA, and Northumbria University, we created a bespoke IFC workflow via XBIM that will allow that to work. It also went right back to how we embed the data in Revit in the first place, and where it needs to go, and all the boxes you need to tick to get that out. And this successfully then imported into the into SFG20. Just in that plant room alone, it identified 12 unique schedules, and there were 41 assets within that plant room that had a code associated with them. This is what it looks like within SFG20. The model is imported into their viewer, so you can have a look around the model, and then you can see all those 12 asset types down the left there, which I've extracted on the right. That you can see these are the types of systems that need maintenance, so filters, chemical dosing units, the pumps, that sort of thing. This is an extract from SFG20. This is as it was about 18 months ago, so it's been updated, and I'll show you what it kind of looks like now, because it's evolving all the time. This example here is just a screenshot as we were playing with the SFG20 system, and it's a drench shower. So in a plant room, you're using chemicals. If you spill them on yourself when you're doing anything maintenance, you need this drench shower to be working. It is an item that needs to be maintained, because when you go to pull it and it doesn't work, it has potentially serious consequences. So I click on the shower item here, and it takes me to its SFG20 schedule, and it tells me in here its requirements for maintenance. And then what came out of the next stage was the asset profile, and this is something that we've never ever been able to get out of our models just by having data within the models. So this is a full planned preventative maintenance schedule for one entire year, just for that single plant room. The colours that you see are linked to the type of maintenance you need to do. So, for example, the red items, if you do not do that piece of maintenance, then you're non-compliant with the standard. So if you were in a hospital environment and you were HTM aligned, if you weren't maintaining filters or air systems within theatres, potentially you're in breach of a regulation that is going to have serious consequences. It could, be a life situation. The items in orange are our recommendations, basically, so they're not as high a level as the red. And then the items in green and grey are the risk assess items that you can change. So this tells us that within that one plant room alone, 2,401 minutes of maintenance for the year, and it splits up between the skill sets. So if you see the skill set there, you can see mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and how many minutes it needs to be. And that was great, and we documented the process. We've made that freely available so that others can follow the process to put SFG20 in there. And as I say, this was done a couple of years ago. This project here is one of our virtual mock-ups. It's a real-life apartment. It hasn't been constructed yet, but it's getting that way, and it's with multiplex in London, and this is on 19 Elms. So this is a fully coordinated apartment type within a 56-story tower block. All of the systems have been input, mechanical, electrical, architectural systems, one complete entire apartment unit. We went back through the workflow that we'd created a couple of years before, and this time we were using, I think, Revit 19, and lo and behold, because of the changes in the Revit versions, the workflow no longer worked. So we had to repeat the process. And what this again shows us is that software moves on all the time, and just because you crack it in one version doesn't mean to say it's automatically going to work in the next. BIMA are continually updating their SFG20 system, and the two constantly need to be checked that they're still that the interfaces are still going to work. Bear with me a second. Before I go to my summary, I just want to take you to another presentation. Bear with me, which is this is the latest outcome from the R&D project. Let me just check that this is sharing. Pam, could you confirm this is sharing the SFG20 screen?
No, we've just got your holding slide. You need to share the screen.
Okay, thank you. Bear with me a second. Right. I need to expand this. Apologies for this. I knew swapping between presentations was going to be less than ideal. Okay, so this now should be sharing the presentation. Pam, if you wouldn't mind confirming that's on.
I could see it. Yes, I can see it now.
Okay, so now this is the outcomes from this virtual mock-up. So this has now been exported through the new workflow, which is getting the SFG20 codings back out to create an asset profile within the SFG20 system. We're just having a fly around through the model here. This is just a screen recording from just last week where we've got this working, and we're just basically clicking on the system to see what information we can get out of this. So on this example, we decided just to have a look for certain items that we knew that would need maintenance. So if we search for an asset type. In this example, we're just going to search for the hot water cylinder. Once we click on that, it takes us to the hot water cylinder system. So if there's more than one, it will show you where they all are within the building, and then you can search around the asset that you're looking at, and it will show you how you're going to get access to it, what's around it, perhaps. You can, if you look at the top right, you can also see product information. So if there was a specific manufacturer's maintenance schedule associated with that, you can append that. You can append PDFs or DWGs or anything else that's associated with that, so that, as Hadil mentioned, if the manufacturer's information overrides what's in SFG20 system as standard, then you can edit it to suit to make sure you're not under or over maintaining. Next, we can click on the asset profile. So this is telling us now that there are 9,277 minutes per annum of maintenance, and similar system before. The reds are statutory requirements, and the oranges are guidance. And I say these can be risk assessed. So if we filter down now to get to our hot water cylinder, we can click on the cylinder, and this will take us then to its maintenance schedule. Separately, I won't try and change my screen again, but I have got a PDF output of that planned preventative maintenance system. So from the model, I am able now to give my client a full snapshot of an entire year's worth of maintenance for their asset. So this apartment now has a separate PPM schedule ready-made straight out of the box. This is the sort of thing that would take weeks, months, maybe longer to accumulate and create by an asset owner, and also is generally not the sort of thing that's passed on particularly well once assets are exchanged hands. Bear with me while I just reshare back to that presentation. Bear with me a second. Okay, so in summary, we have shown that BIM can actually be used for operational benefits. I know that it can. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but we actually created a repeatable example that we could show, and not just go step out of the theory and the hypothetical. PPM schedules. Our pilot showed an example of what can be achieved by just putting one code into a model. Okay, this example picks on SFG20. I'm not particularly trying to plug SFG20 because it's nothing to do with us. It's not our system. We're not employed by them. But it shows the principle, how that can apply if you're going to use Uniclass codes or NRM codes, all the different coding systems that link to other systems, the benefits that you can get out of those. What it also shows is that the employer's information requirement or exchange information requirements is the key to defining what you need on a project. Because if you don't ask, you certainly don't get. And on our projects now where SFG20 is a requirement, we include the workflow within our BIM execution plans to make sure that everyone on the project understands how they can input their data. What it also emphasizes is the importance of the data drops. We see too many projects where it's a data dump really at the end of the project, which is a model full of data, and it may well be attributed and all correct and in there, but there is absolutely no guarantee whatsoever that you can use that for anything, because we made that assumption too before we did this test just on this one code alone. Therefore, your data drops at key stages are important. You can do this data drop, say, at planning stage or at tender stage, and you can give your client a full snapshot of what their building is going to take to maintain. Okay, we've done one plant room, we've done one apartment, but one building in its entirety will show you how much maintenance will be required going forward on that project. That's it from me. I think I'm bang on time, I think.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jason.
Questions at the end if you have any. Thanks, Hadil.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Jason. That was very informative. Next, we have Adam Holmes from the University of York. So over to you, Adam. Yeah, we can see your slides now. Thank you. I think you're on mute.
Hello everyone, I'm Adam Holmes. I'm the Head of Estate Planning at University of York, and prior to that I was the Group Manager at East Riding of Yorkshire Council. The reason I'm telling you that is that I've only been at post at the university since just before lockdown. It was at the start of March. So I'm sort of new to the university sector and new to BIM for estates, but certainly the journey over the last 10 years of looking at BIM and wanting to talk about it. So quickly to discuss with you in terms of the university, we're a 2-campus site, 440 buildings, about 18,000 students. In terms of the makeup of the buildings, we have a number of historic buildings. We've got 1960s class buildings which are listed, or historic buildings are listed. We've got new buildings, but they're also on, we're in a conservation area. We're a registered park in gardens, and we've got several lakes. We're rather greedy with them. So that's the estate challenge that we've got at the University of York. Now, in terms of who am I to talk to you, and why am I so keen to talk to you, I've sort of taken it upon myself, certainly over the last 8 to 10 years, of wanting to talk at events such as this and BIM, other BIM conferences, mainly because I've seen from my own experience how many mistakes that we've made, the organisations I've been, even though we've won a load of awards from various bodies for our BIM projects. And although I could easily show, you know, the glossy pictures of how well things have gone, I think from a learning experience for everyone today and generally, I always feel, look, well, let's tell you about the mistakes despite the awards we've won. And that's why I'm so keen to talk to you and to everyone else today. So really, I'm pitching this quick conversation we're going to have for the next, I've got 18 minutes left, to estate managers, facilities managers and ops teams that are keen on starting this digital delivery. That's where I'm kind of pitching this discussion, and I'm keen on taking 3 takeaway points. Those of you who aren't in that sector, obviously you'll appreciate some of the things I'm sort of raising, and some of the pitfalls that we've faced, and certainly some of them I've heard Jason mentioned. I've experienced exactly the same thing with regard to a very sort of exclusive model at the end of a project full of data, yet it simply just gets parked up and no one uses it. So the plan is to give you 3 takeaway points, simple, hopefully, and also how we're looking to implement these at York. So let me just quickly start with the BIM journey that I've gone on, which I think, hopefully, without being too arrogant, echoes a lot of how the construction industry has gone in terms of the BIM journey of the last 10 years. In that it started as a design sort of tool, effectively, so we could prepare collaborative schemes and collaborative models, working together through architects, engineers, other disciplines, and then also seeing that built on site and being able to design buildings that we know can be built in a collaborative, clash-detected way to deliver a sort of client's end product and improve efficiency, etc. That's why we started, and certainly the department I sort of was a group manager with a local authority. We invested heavily in software and in training to develop our teams going back 8 to 10 years ago now, and then we slowly watched as sort of contractors we work with adopted BIM technologies as well to help deliver construction schemes. Now, this particular image that's on screen is I would say atypical of a scheme that we've seen. That the images look great in terms of here's a building we designed, look at it getting built, and here's it finished. But I have to say there was huge problems. This was a scheme that had a BIM model at the end that simply just went on the shelf, that wasn't used by the end users, the building managers, the FM teams, because it started as a design-led product, and that was the issue. But let's not get away from the fact that in terms of BIM, I know it's often seen as simply an architectural design tool or construction tool. There are a huge amount of benefits that we're getting from it in terms of a clash detected item, that we can see the issues before things get to site, things that are built, and then we can sort of make sure that when the building's completed, it's all in order. Now, so this is my first point of 3. It's one of the pitfalls. It's the starting point it's not necessarily, in hindsight we're saying it's wrong, but really the starting point has been, certainly from my experience, from the design of a building at the start, in that where I came from, we were having to create things from scratch in terms of, let's assume the FM teams, the operational teams will want this kind of information. We'll provide a 3D model, we'll provide that embedded scope and specification information to contractors to build, and the contractors themselves will hand back to us a completed model. So we've got this process of design into construction using BIM. And I think as the industry as a whole over the last 8 to 10 years has really embraced that. And I think we've seen a lot of improvements in construction techniques and design techniques through to BIM. And people still talk about BIM being this, an efficient way of delivering buildings. The problem we have as designers or estate development departments, and obviously for contractors as well, is the missing part. It's the in use. And Jason mentioned before about a model that was handed over full of data, wasn't used. I've had loads of experience of that, and it's a bit of a waste because we know all this information. I've been to lots of BIM conferences and workshops and seminars and different groups where we're saying, look at this fantastic information, but where's the end user? And often a sort of complaint we have is, where the FM teams and the estate management teams at these kind of functions, they've got to see how good it is. But in defense to my colleagues in operations, estates teams, is the focus was kind of not pitched at them. This is an old image of the BIM cycle. And as if you can see, most of you that have been working with BIM for a while will know this from good 8 to 10 years ago now. And if you look again at the focus, it's about designing. It's about documenting the design, it's about building the design, and it's about completing the building. The operation maintenance bit, it's just a small part of the circle immediately before it disappears off to be demolished. And so we have to remember BIM was brought in, from my opinion, to improve construction efficiency, improve construction quality, and improve programming and costs. And that is still one of the reasons it's there. It wasn't really pitched initially at, this is how you should run your building. But let me just go back one. This is a great donut image of actually how we need to flip the focus around, because from an operations and FM team's perspective, the vast amount of cost is in the building use. So that's where the pitfall has initially been, that we've kind of pitched it wrong. So my sort of first takeaway from this is that we often hear about clients being the people paying for the building, but I think my takeaway, number one, if you're planning for delivery, is really ops teams, FM teams, start considering yourselves in a kind of a client role, because in terms of the as-built information, you're in charge, I would say, and therefore you can make demands on everyone else of what's expected. Therefore, let's flip it round in a simple way and start from you being our client. And certainly at York, we're now starting, I'm in the state development team, I'm starting to call sort of my ops colleagues as clients, because we're delivering it for them to manage and run. Although we're all part of the same university, I'm considering them to be my client. So that's takeaway number one. Takeaway number two, again, it's a pitfall from experience. Who owns and controls and updates the information? The key bit here is from a BIM perspective, you will have all the way through the construction and design of a building, everyone will be saying, well, we own it and we control it. And there's lots of contractual mechanisms. The key bit in here is in use. Who's going to own it? And particularly update it, because that's quite a resource demanding tool. So I'll give, this is a really brief case study that I want to go through. of a scheme that was delivered about 5 years ago, and I think it's still relevant today. And hearing some of the comments Jason made, it's still relevant. This is a 40 to 60 bed extra care facility, and it was designed by the design team and as a BIM project, and it's set off by the designers that we're going to do a BIM project. It wasn't demanded by a client or FM team as a BIM project. In terms of works information, the contractors provided a as-built Navisworks model and a Revit model as built with lots of specification material embedded into it. And it was a fantastic sort of model that was provided with a huge amount of data and information. So the question was, who's going to receive this model and use it? So I decided to have a bit of a sort of handover workshop with various departments to discuss how we're going to use this. So the first department is obviously the team I was working in and I'm currently working in terms of estate development or a design department. We've created and delivered and built the buildings, but we don't necessarily withhold the information after use. We're not expected to. So a lot of organizations will have a facilities management department, and they would correctly say, well, actually, we're the ones that use the building and look after it, maintain it. We should have the information. And you'd say, yes, I think that'd be a great lead on that. There is, though, teams that have maintenance departments, and this project had the same thing, where maintenance, as in teams that go out and, you know, with vans and do reactive stuff. So the facilities management team, in regard to this project, are the ones that looked after the roof replacement in 10 years, the upgrading of the boilers, the planned maintenance stuff, and cleaning and other sort of general daily management. The maintenance department covered reactive things. They physically went out and repaired broken door handles, locks, broken windows. They could also claim that actually they should have access to the model and use it. We also have, and some department and organizations having a strategic asset team that act as strategic clients. They will also say, well, actually, we should have the model at the end. We're the ones that pay bills. We also do valuations. We have to maintain it from a financial perspective. But it doesn't stop there. We've obviously got building users, our building departments, and in some cases you may have sort of several building departments who will use the building. And certainly this was the same with this facility. And they will also claim that they should have the sort of in-use information, access to the model. And what's not helped is they sometimes have their own operations managers. So hopefully you'll resonate, some of you, with this, where there's a huge amount of people at the end of a project, all kind of claiming to want to use information and think it's useful and want to own it. The issue is when the question comes to who's going to update it. And if you take the example of Jason's model that he showed earlier of the kind of information you can use, everyone took a step back because they realized there's a huge amount of resource needed in terms of pulling it together and moving forward. So just quickly on this, takeaway number 2 is it's got to be really clear from the outset who's not only who's going to receive the as-built information, because I think most people know who gets that, but do you understand that you're also having to update the information and who's going to do that? That is key. And it then follows on to my final and third kind of point from a pitfall, which is really the overload of information. Know what to ask for. I've certainly been involved with a huge amount of projects and still am, even at the university, where we're providing a lot of information, data-rich models full of data. But am I confident it's going to be used? Was I confident in the past? No, I wasn't. I didn't think it would get used. Although the data's there and it could be fantastically good to use, there's simply too much, or it wasn't catered for what the FM teams need. And sometimes the initial thoughts are, this is a huge tool, it's only used by architects and developers and builders that provide a huge amount of data. It's too much for us, it's too much for our CAFM system, which really just wants 2D set of plans and just wants the asbestos report and just wants a bit of data about what we need to maintain when I need to maintain the boiler. And so the pitfall has been really the overload from the construction side. Now, I know this document's 2 years old, but I thought when it came out, it was a fantastic tool really to talk to my ops colleagues and FM colleagues and clients about actually, it's all about keeping it simple. Don't think you need loads and loads of information. Just simply ask for what you need and make it relevant to you. If you just want 6 items of information, we'll make sure that's in your employees' information requirements or on your exchange information requirements. That's what we need to provide you, and we'll give it to you in the format you need, rather than us be wasteful in terms of the information we provide. And a big example, going back, to this one, is that this model included the actual sockets in every single room. And it just was a case of, well, we don't need that kind of information. It's too much. So at the university, I'm really pleased to say my asset colleagues or ops colleagues have prepared their own asset information requirements. And it's a fairly basic document, about 18 pages of the things that they're wanting. And it's something that we're looking to work on going forward. And what I'm particularly keen on is that it's about keeping it simple. And what do I mean by that? Well, although the university uses a Planon-based CAFN system, we also use a GIS-based asset system, and I think it's a really good visual tool, particularly when you've got a large campus that's in terms of the number of buildings we have, we're in the top 20 in terms of the area we cover. And so this, for example, is an output of services, underground services. In terms of developing and getting ready for digital delivery, all we simply need to ask for is that when the next project is built on this area, please provide the utility information using this similar data that we can input it in. That's the system we are using, and that's what we like to utilize. This is another sort of extract we've taken from the GIS, which again, it concerns tree roots near services. And at York, there's plenty of those. So again, the next buildings that are getting built, it's a case of this is the information required. What existing trees or new trees you're planting on this development that we're getting provided could affect the utilities. This is the information operation teams and the FM teams want to know and have on their GIS system that they use to manage the estate. I've only got a few more of these, but this is the Wi-Fi array from external Wi-Fi points. I think it's a fantastic visual, but again, it needs to be described in the information requirements. Actually, we don't want just the data of what the external Wi-Fi points are, where they're located. Can you please show us the array so we can then map it on our GIS system? Again, keeping it simple, that's the requirement that you need in the information requirement documents, that we want the Wi-Fi arrays, we want the positions, not just the heights and the model numbers, but can we map it out on the array that's then compatible to put in our GIS system? The final image I want to show you is again, where the level of detail is starting to increase. This is incomplete in terms of the extract I'm showing you, but this is electrical circuits now being plotted out on existing and new, and this is particularly for some new buildings that have been built for the last 10 years. Again, this is the kind of information the operations team are wanting to manage through the GIS system, not just simply old 2D information. Again, this is 3D and it's useful. We want the same, therefore, information to be plotted in going forward. So in quick summary, 3 takeaways I've got for you are: operations and FM teams try and start to take on that client type role, particularly in relation to the information. You are quite an important and leading part of it, but make sure you're clear that who's going to manage the in-use information, because it will need to be updated. And thirdly, because of how big takeaway number 2 could be, keep it simple. Only ask for the things you genuinely need and want to manage and maintain using this system. Although hopefully that discussion will help. And now passing on to Karen.
Thank you very much, Adam. That was very informative of you. Now off to Karen Alford from the Environment Agency, who is going also to speak to us and share her presentation. Over to you, Karen.
Hello everyone, I'm Karen Alford from the Environment Agency. I'm going to apologise, my broadband link is not great, so to maintain a good voice connection I am not going to use my camera. So I work in the asset management part of the Environment Agency. I very much focus on data and information. Obviously from an Environment Agency's perspective, generally speaking, we're talking about infrastructure type assets, which probably protect some of your buildings, or you walked along today as you took the dog for a walk. So our assets are out in the environment. Often you don't even realise they are there. And really understanding where they are and how we need that information going forward in the future is what I'm going to talk to you. And I think despite the fact that it is infrastructure, you will definitely see some common threads in my presentation. So I just wanted to go to the next one, page down. Sorry, it's that's it. So I think it's worth just reminding everyone, there's been a lot of research around data and information. We've got a lot of information, it's growing every day. However, it can take, on average, everyone spends about a day trying to find something and collate, and that's extremely wasteful on our resources. And I think what we're trying to do with our whole BIM process is reduce that, both in the time that it takes to design, construct, and also operate and maintain the assets. So we did some research at the beginning of our BIM journey, and we discovered that a lot of the information we had was not digitally accessible. That is to say that it was either it was in a proprietary format, or it was called Karen 1. So we have about at the moment we have about over 1 terabyte of just information, file related information, and that's growing all of the time. So if you don't have some order and some structure in that information, it becomes useless. And of course, from an asset team's perspective, we have that old problem of really having poor information being handed over, which continues to be a problem. So I just really wanted to reflect. We are an ISO 55000 accredited organisation, which we achieved in 2018, and there was a big chunk as part of that called asset information. So we have taken the foundations of our BIM thinking, our BIM processes, and how we manage data and information as being a key part of how we deliver that capability. So I thought it was worth just mentioning that the sort of link between standards here. So from my perspective, the BIM basics from a client perspective is about buying two assets, the physical and the digital. Now, what I will say before I start this, we will be moving to the ISO 19650 standards, but we're waiting for all of the standards to be released before we do that. So within my presentation, you might see some references to the ISO and PAS 1192 standards. So I'm going to share with you how we developed the approach. And from an asset management perspective, or infrastructure perspective, we weren't as lucky, and continue not to be as lucky, as having a good IFC structure. So for our infrastructure assets, we had nothing to base it on. So we really had to build our own. But actually, we have a lot of information, and I think as Jason identified and Hadil earlier, you do have a lot of information, and actually one of the primary tasks from a client perspective is to align, make sense, and align, and particularly align to Uniclass, because Uniclass 15 is an interoperability code. It allows you to link your assets and your information to a code that is universally recognised, which I think is a really important part. We had to go down to the detail to do this, but there is, within the COBE structure, there is a data structure that you can do. However, as I think Adam highlighted, it is you have to do the groundwork in doing the alignment. So it is no good saying, I just want everything in COBE, because unless you do the mapping, you will just get a significant amount of data for which you have no purpose. So you really need to be clear as to exactly what you want and how you want it, because otherwise you will end up with a large COBE export that you can do pretty little with it. So we spent some time aligning our information to COBE. It wasn't, with the right skills, it wasn't necessarily a challenging task, but I think this is all part of the preparation that you need to think about as you move forward. What has been mentioned is the employer's information requirements, and I think this is a really valuable tool to a client, and it is something that is quite tempting to ask someone else to produce for you, and actually produce it for every commission. But this is a set of information about how you want your information and data to be managed, and it has to be owned by the client, I believe, and it has to be developed and maintained by the client. And you might need help and assistance to do that, but by having a firm set of standards that can be applied to not only your new buildings, but how your data and information is managed by other third parties, it begins to give you the control about how that data is going to be managed to support your outcomes. Sorry, where have I gone? Sorry, I'm just having a bit, that's it. Because we really started out, we realized very early on that the skills to, not only in the infrastructure world did we lack some of the data standards like IFC, but we also significantly lacked the skills to do that. So we very much started at the information approach, and this is what we developed was the information delivery plan, where we classified all of our information. I think this is again a very key part of building client capability, as has been mentioned by Adam and Jason. Being able to understand the data you need and classify it so that you can find and search for it in the future, and also procure it so you know who's going to be delivering it, and then have a mechanism of being able to validate that information as it comes across. I've got some text there which you'll be able to read when you have the presentation. We also developed our common data environment. We use a product called Asite, but there are many others available, as Adil mentioned, BIM Glider. So there is now a growing number of applications out there that are in use. But from a client perspective, this is a really valuable tool, because this is the place where information can be exchanged. And I think particularly with the Hackett report, now being able to collate and manage the evidence, knowing who made the decisions and how those decisions were made, is all part of the journey that we are on. And actually having that information in a format and a structure that you can understand, but is also machine readable, so you can start building the foundations to push and pull that information around. We realised very early on that as an asset owner with thousands of assets, we could not rely, and we didn't want to entrust a project to produce their own codes, that when that information was generated for us, we would not be able to understand. We have something like between about 700 live projects running at any one time, so we had to build the capability to ensure that we could generate information that we could use in the longer term. So we have done quite a lot of work in developing short codes and standards around the metadata that we require. And I think, again, this is a really key part of building capability. Training. I think keeping people up to date with training is a real challenge. And I think, nearly 10 years on, we continue to, I think 10 years on, I would reflect, I think in the last year or so, people are really beginning to get there. But you have to keep plugging away at training, both in terms of engaging your suppliers, influencing your suppliers, working with them to develop their capability, as well as developing capability within your own organisation. So what sometimes is missed, that I feel, is that the BIM basics enables you to think about how to build your digital twin and deliver that digital capability that we're all so far after. But we've done some great work, but actually, how do we change that into having real-time information and structured information, and be able to use the range of technology that's out there that is actually very, getting cheaper all of the time, but actually can really add value to us. So we have produced a short video, which you can find. It's on YouTube, and I've given you the link. But I think sometimes, for me, building a digital capability, it's lots of smaller pieces of capability that need to come together. So there is no magic wand to digitizing, but there is lots of things that you can do, and you're probably doing, that will enable you to achieve that goal. And as Adam said, the data can be used in various forms. So we've put a lot of energy into using our existing platforms to better push and pull data and information. So we've done a lot of data alignment, making sure also that the way that our data was managed at the back end was consistent. So what we had discovered is, and particularly when you have multiple systems managing data, often the relationships between those systems are managed on a one-to-one basis, but actually as a client organization, an asset management organization, you are reliant on other people sometimes managing that. So being able to tidy up the back end was really key. We have also started a project which is aligning our existing asset information. So it's following the BIM standards to our existing data, and we have what is called a name store. And because of the spatial, because of the capability of software, we can now push that information to our GIS platforms. So users are no longer just compelled to use their asset management system. They can use our GIS platform, zoom down, click on the links, and actually open the document. So this gives, it really brings the data to life, but it also gives, at an organisational level, it gives you much more flexibility with regards to how people can access the information. And that's particularly useful for us because we obviously have a strong incident management role. So, in times of significant flooding, we bring in people from different areas to manage being able to go to generic platform, click on that information is really valuable. We've also been doing work on what I call sort of productizing. So where we expect teams to process and generate information or data such as LiDAR, they have the LiDAR tiles available, but they have to process them to make any sense. We've spent a little bit of money, which actually wasn't very much, but to bring that information in a form that our teams can use, so they can very quickly begin to see the profile of the assets, measure the peaks and the troughs, and prevent them from doing that processing themselves. From an environment agency perspective, we are committed to sharing our data externally. And if you could tap into Google Environment Agency asset information or asset data, you can come to our openly available data platform. So we have two functions. You can either use the sort of search facility as you see here, or we've got an API section. So if you're interested and you have the right skills, you can provide machine-to-machine links to our data. On that platform, we share our asset data after it has been through a open data protocol, but we also share our maintenance plans and our capital program. And later, because, and I guess we're in a slightly different position, we're a very publicly accountable organisation, and we have commitments. People are interested in, particularly insurance companies, organisations like yourselves, are very interested in how we're managing our assets, because the way we manage our assets can very much influence your ability to manage the assets too. A big piece of our data sort of digital capability has been about making our data requirements openly available. So we have launched what we call a data requirements library. So if you tap into Google Environment Agency DRL, or Data Requirements Library, you'll come to this library. So we describe our assets, we describe the information we need, we describe the short codes that you saw earlier. We advise anyone who's providing us with information where that data needs to go, the COBI mapping, and we are improving this information, because through this journey what we realized is the way that we described our assets was not digitally friendly. So we've had to do quite a lot of work in the background to align, but also expand, because we see this platform as being a place that if we can get consistency in how information is portrayed, our suppliers can access it, our own teams can access it, our internal systems can access it, suddenly we're working towards having a single version of the truth in terms of our data specification. What has been, what we're also doing is we have made it machine readable, so that code is can be accessed by machines. And to support that activity, we've produced our CAD and modelling standards, and within the CAD and modelling standards we have data cards. So we have mandated our suppliers through an update of the EAR to use our CAD and modelling standards alongside our data requirements library to pull across the data that we need to be delivered back to us as part of our COBI output in the future. So I think we've seen from both Hadil, Jason and Adam the importance of defining data in a way that you can ensure it's delivered back. This is how might offer some thoughts about how this can be done, and done more succinctly. So we are very much sort of taking ownership of the data that we need through that process. A big part of going digital is now, how do we check all of this information? We've got multiple systems within our business that will need that information. it is not practical to expect a variety of systems to manage that data integration. We've got to look at a smarter way. Also, we know that our corporate systems will change over time, so we've got to look at how we can do this. So we have a project which is called Data Rules and Visualization, which is an active current project. It's very much around how we can bring the data in, assure it, give an OK, a thumbs up or a thumbs down to our suppliers that it meets our specification, and then we can introduce it and automate it, that entry into our various systems, so we can remove the mundane tasks, we can remove the complexities with retaining and maintaining good data quality, but we can also start doing more things. So things like checking our engineering rules, checking our specifications are as we expect. So as we build our information, we're then building a rule set to validate that information. And we've just completed proof of concept, and I'm pleased to say that our proof of concept on our data rules has been a success, and we're now pushing that forward as a project. Now, what I'm not expecting, I mean, we are an organisation that are managing, say, sort of 700 plus projects. We've got a big data tasks, but I'm just sharing this as a to give you some thoughts about some of the processes that can support the digital journey. So really, just to sum up, I think if you're starting on this journey, it's really essential to capture the existing processes, because by and large, these activities are happening, but they may not be happening in a way that it's easy to identify. There is a need to translate and align. I think we've been really lucky in that we've worked with our supply chain. We haven't just told them what we wanted. We've worked with them. We've helped them along the journey. We have, we've been an intelligent client. We've worked on ideas. We've worked out. So we've got a digital community of practice. So as I just described, the process of producing data, we've got a task and finish group, which combines a number of suppliers that are working out how this can actually be done, so we can help the suppliers that are less digitally capable, give them the toolkit to generate that information. Develop and implement, it's very important to take small steps and take and bring everyone along with you, but sometimes those small steps can actually be very significant. I think, as Adam described, by pushing data out to GIS platforms, suddenly you bring that data to life, and that can be a very small investment, but actually bring significant benefits. It may not be where you want to start, but consider how you can build that ability to automate and streamline the asset management activities, sort of now and in the future, and actually building data that is fit for use across the asset life. And I think that's it from me. I think I'm going to hand over to I think it's Carl.
Yes, thank you very much, Karen. Now off to the BIM4 Health group.
Hi, it's not actually Carl, it's Jonathan, but I'll start off. Carl is going to join us in a moment. Let me just share my screen. Is that actually sharing now?
It's sharing your screen, but not in presenter mode.
Right, okay, that's good. There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, right, I'll leave my camera off for the time being to save bandwidth, as others have done. Right, some fascinating presentations so far. Clearly we're all on the same journey, but some of us seem to be starting at very different points, or seem to be at very different points at the moment. My name is Jonathan Stewart. I'm the National Chair of the Health Estates and Facilities Management Association. I'm the co-chair with Steve Batson from the Institute of Healthcare Engineering and Estate Management of the BIM for Health group. We're one of the constituted BIM for community groups under the BIM Alliance, so very similar to the BIM for Estates group. But our focus is on this championing and influencing estates digitalisation in the NHS and the wider healthcare and supply chain to the NHS as well. The group is formed of industry professionals, particularly professional institutions. So you will see we've got people like the RIBA, RACS, CIOB, Construction Industry Council represented in the group. We've also got all 4 nations of the NHS as well, so NHS England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, as well as the Department of Health and the Department of Health's Procure 22 construction framework as well. We've recently reviewed and realigned our objectives. I won't go through them, but they are there, as you'll see from the presentation when you get a chance to go through it a bit later on. We've had a rethink and a bit of a relaunch, and as well as focusing on new objectives, we've also reviewed our structure and membership to try and get it a little bit more focused on the end objectives. We've decided to work in four new subgroups to drive that delivery, and those subgroups meet independently and then report back to the main BIM for Health group on a quarterly basis. We've also changed our direction a little bit to focus more on the operational benefits that the speakers have talked about this morning, really, rather than that construction agenda, which was where I think we got hung up in over previous years. So that's the group I'm speaking on behalf of. We're asked to talk to you about the challenges for NHS digitalisation. This is where I think we're probably at quite a different point in the journey to many of the speakers that have spoken this morning. There is, and I don't say any of these points as a criticism of colleagues in the NHS, it is, I think, a statement of just where we are. There is across the estates and facilities fraternity and the wider NHS management a lack of awareness and knowledge of BIM and the digital technologies that we need to be adopting. I think it's partly because the language of BIM seems to lack this sort of engagement for NHS staff. It is, when I speak to colleagues, many of them, when you mention BIM as a term, they will say, oh, well, that's just about construction projects, isn't it? That we don't need to deal with that. And that's why I think we're sort of trying to drop a lot of that reference to BIM out of our communication, because we need people to understand that it's not just a construction methodology, and we need to strengthen those links to the operational estate that are really not well understood. I think maybe Adam or Jason sort of showed a slide showing 83% of the cost of an asset is in the operational phase of it, and I think that's not always as well understood in the NHS as it should be. This position is exacerbated by the fact that the NHS doesn't as yet have much in the way of focused policy and guidance on digitalisation generally, or BIM specifically. And I think we have a tendency in the NHS, if we're not directly told to do something, we tend to have more than enough other things to focus on. So it's not helped that the NHS didn't really step up to this centrally when the whole Digital Built Britain programme started. It was also, the NHS was not always seen as a central government department, which meant that it was able to neatly sidestep some of the national agendas that were out there. It's also important to understand that, of course, as a public body, the resources are not always there to invest in such things as software systems, digital integration of services, and also even BIM is seen as a sort of an add-on extra for the development projects, which clearly shouldn't be in this day and age. I can't begin to tell you how many CAFM systems there are in the NHS. Many organisations will have more than one system within their own estates and facilities department, so you may sometimes have as many as 4 or 5 different systems managing operational data, with minimal integration across that range. Many of those tools are designed and built for a specific task, like managing portrait activities or acting as a front help desk, and haven't been built with the intention of integrating that data, such as we saw in Adil's and Adam's presentations particularly. So we have quite a lot of difficulty, and there's no central system or recommended system in the NHS at this stage. And that goes hand in hand with the fact that we've not always been terribly good at managing the information and the records that we hold on our estate. Obviously, the NHS estate is a colossal undertaking. It's I think we're one of the biggest landowners in Europe, and there's a huge amount of information out there. But I can tell you from personal experience that a lot of organisations still are working with paper plans and don't even have complete CAD records of their estate. So we are starting from a relatively low base that is going to require a huge amount of investment. And this obviously all leads into these sort of potential disconnects between how we design buildings and how we plan for how they're to be used, the way that patient pathways are changing, and the demand on the health system is changing, but we're not necessarily able to integrate that planning for the health outcomes with the building environments as well as we ought to be able to. So it's quite a challenge in a lot of ways. Whoops. But it's not all negative. We have got some opportunities and some developments happening, and I think it's fair to say the NHS has actually just drafted its first NHS blueprint for the health improvement. It's just gone straight out of my head. The HIP process, which Carl will pick up on shortly. This document is actually being drafted. It's actually in its final stages of being issued to the ministers for approval. So this will be our first sort of step into the proper full NHS policy. So I think it should be quite a good step forward, hopefully. There's also an increasing government drive towards digitalisation across all of the government departments, and the NHS is being pressured to begin to sort of step up in that regard as well. So I think we're beginning to get driven to it now. And in particular, we're saying now that our investment programs require some fairly stringent business planning and business case processes now, which drive people to have to use digital processes and commitments to sustainability, which are exactly what we need. And oddly, in this last few months of the dreadful coronavirus pandemic, it has also had a positive of raising quite a lot of awareness of benefits of digitalisation and using data for management. As many of you will have seen on the news, it's been very difficult, I think, at times for the NHS to show exactly what it's been doing. And I think that the kickback from that has meant we are beginning to look a lot more at data. And I noticed, just as a slight tangent, I saw a video this week, and I can't remember quite where now, of St Pancras Station using a digital twin and a whole load of sensors and cameras and other technology to actually map passenger movements through the train station and to monitor their temperatures and any non-compliances with social distancing, specifically for COVID awareness and COVID safety. So clearly the technology is out there, and I think the NHS can certainly see the benefits in that, albeit it's got some way to go to get there. And of course, the commercial markets, the design consultants, the construction companies, the technology manufacturers, the software manufacturers are all driving that innovation and market and allowing the NHS to begin to see what can be delivered. Now, I want to just show you very quickly a video. I have to say that this is not our work, and we don't necessarily condone, sorry, not condone, we don't necessarily endorse what is actually said in the video. It is actually just what we think as a good example of a commercial approach to integrating data in an operational facilities management way. So hopefully this will start, and then I'll come back to speaking again in a few moments.
Hi, my name's Mark Lenton. I'm an innovation consultant working for SRO Solutions. On behalf of our partner ecosystem, I'm very excited to be providing this end-to-end smart asset management narrative into our Seeds 2020 submission. Our supporting partners shown are carefully drawn from working within a wide number of sectors, such as industrial, construction, healthcare, utilities, education, offshore and maritime, because they typically lead the way in their field, offering open and interoperable capabilities, often making them unique in their field. Bringing innovative transferable capabilities and skills from one sector to another is crucial to ensure best-in-class solutions are developed and delivered, and we strongly believe that overall collaboration sits at the heart of ensuring clients get to meet their desired outcomes. For the purposes of this presentation, we've focused our discussion on the healthcare construction industry, where it's evident there's significant benefit to be derived by applying innovative end-to-end information management solutions that drive actions and decisions within the general building process lifecycle, from design, build, operate to disposal. Although the collective Seeds entry paper is based on a hospital use case, typical problems worth solving are similar across most industry sectors, whether a university campus, office building, hospital, or whatever.
Sorry, Pam, I noticed, can nobody hear the audio on there?
So I can't hear it, but and I know one person's responded saying they can't hear it.
I could hear it fine.
Okay, so some can hear it, some can't. So my suggestion would be, I'm just thinking of timing as well as maybe we don't play the video, but we include it in the handouts.
Yeah, time is an issue. I think we're not going to get through all of this if we play the video as well.
Yeah.
Okay, right. I'll hand over then to Carl. I'm still showing my screen, aren't I?
Yeah, but you're not. Yes, but you're not actually sharing anything at the moment. But yes.
Right, I'm not sharing anything at the moment.
You are now.
Right, okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Right, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Carl Redmond, who is Strategic Estates Lead, the NHS Estates Delivery Unit for NHS England and NHS Improvement, who will, he can perhaps just fill in the gaps a little bit of what we were going to show you in the video and then the last 3 slides.
Yeah, I'll try and run through these as quick as I can. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. Appreciate some of them have had sound problems. It's unfortunate the video we didn't have time for, and obviously some of you couldn't hear, but because it would have helped with context, obviously. The other bit of background, I work for NHSEI. I'm on secondment with a number of trusts, secondary care trusts and a number of primary care programs, and some that are actually linked, which is quite nice as well within the NHS. So we primary and secondary are talking to each other, where we link physical elements, build programs and existing estate programs together, so we have a joined up approach to not only the physical outputs but also the throughput, the user input into those assets as well, wherever that might be. And that means coming at it from two sides. One obviously is the building information modeling program, and the other is the smart enterprise asset management program. So one at either end. Picking up on Jason's point and Adam's point, and Karen's from earlier as well. I think all excellent presentations actually. So what we're trying to do is start with the end in mind, but make sure that we don't just deal with the BIM agenda, but also start to build on what it is, what receptacle we want to have this data go into, what type of data we want, and that means early engagement with the EFM teams, the operations teams, and anybody else that sees a priority within this process. So on the diagram that's on the screen right now, you can see that the Smart Enterprise Asset Management solution sits in the middle of the jigsaw on the left-hand side, and it will touch on a number of areas. Now, clearly, we're only going to start picking on small or certain elements of this, because if you try and introduce all of what's on that screen right now to any client, certainly the NHS, it's just going to overwhelm them. They're not going to understand. They're not going to be able to take it all in. And the other issue is we might not be able to afford all of it. So what we're trying to do is introduce a system where data can be captured from the BIM process for operational outputs, specifically based on the priorities of the EFM team and as I mentioned, operational team. So on the right hand side of that diagram, we're going to be picking on certain elements to start with. They will include compliance, contract management, BIM integration, and probably control center. The others are available and more within the functionality of the Smart Enterprise Asset Management solution, the SEAM solution as we call it. but we're not going to turn that functionality on just yet. And yes, we are basing this on interoperable open standards of protocol type of arrangements. So as and when we want to add functionality to this offering, we can do a bit of a horizon scanning, bring in best in class to bolt into whatever's required by the client based on their revenue options, and also their aspirations and where they see their priorities being, not that of the contractor. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily all the contractor's fault, because I think Adam alluded to it earlier. I think there is a need to engage with the EFM teams, as I mentioned, and Adam did as well, and quite rightly. I think we need to bring them on board, bring them in, but also that includes the contractors as well, so they need to do their bit. So there is a cultural shift, which obviously I'm sure you're all aware of, that also needs to change. So that's what we're trying to do as far as the Smart Enterprise Asset Management solution is concerned, and some of the areas that we can move into. Next slide, please, Jonathan. Hopefully on this next slide. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, this tries to give you an idea of what it is we're attempting to do between the various data sets and how we link the CDE to the SEAM. So the idea being is that we bring the CDE and the SEAM in parallel to support the whole life cycle programs and reinforce the end in mind offering to feed into the operational piece, and ensuring that systems and data is aligned. It also means that we try to build on the smart building outcomes identified in EIRs, which can be linked to specific asset information in the CDE and then mapped into the SEAM, where operational data from IoT sensors, etc., and IoT systems and other sources will evolve. We're able to maintain and maximize the data to support desired business outcomes, whatever they might be, again based on EFM requirements. It also avoids, if we can do this in parallel, if you like, and bring these elements together simultaneously rather than trying to focus on one end and then slot it all in. So starting at both ends and meeting in the middle, if you like. That's the idea. We also avoid costly and complex retrofits of data and systems post handover, which again is not what we want. So we're capturing the relevant data, specific and structured data, and we're also trying to avoid that complex retrofit piece after handover. And again, it's all based on interoperable open standards, so we can fit in and build in and around the client's requirements. So we start small, and then the idea being is that we build out and create it as and when revenue and aspirations fit. There are other benefits to all of this as well, but I'm obviously conscious of time. The final slide, I think, just tries to bring it all together. So the final slide, please, Jonathan. What this does is the Rubik's Cube in the middle is to represent the SEAM, the Smart Enterprise Asset Management solution. And the idea is that we bring various data sets together into one location. So this isn't just about the physical, and as it suggests here, we're looking to connect up, and there's just some examples, not exhaustive on part one, and who we're trying to attract into this platform, this smart platform, is illustrated in bullet point number 2. So it's not just the physical element, we're also talking about finance and how we can bring them in, and e-procurement and inventory, etc., how we bring in the clinicians and how we bring in the operational piece. So what that enables us to do is have this holistic view of the asset, not just from a physical perspective and how well it performs from an energy specific assets and components and equipment, in this instance very critical equipment in a healthcare environment, but also the physical, the usual stuff like lighting, for instance, air handling units, all the bits, or some of the examples given on the left hand side there. And then the outcomes, once we can have a look at that, developing insights, etc., the outcomes can benefit a range of areas in around sustainability, which we know is high on the agenda, backlog, which again is high on the healthcare's agenda. The numbers are horrendous, quite frankly. I mean, the numbers are astronomical, running into the billions. Productivity, asset optimization, cost reduction, etc., so there's lots and lots of areas that we can pick up on in terms of those outcomes. Again, this is not exhaustive, and the idea is that we not only address the monetary element, which obviously is key to everybody. It doesn't matter what sector you're in, including the healthcare. Money, I'm afraid, is very, very important. Trying to get it out of the treasury and trying to demonstrate the ROI in this instance is got to be a high priority. Otherwise, we're not going to get any capital funding, and we need to demonstrate how that's going to benefit revenue outcomes as well within this environment. But also the non-monetary benefits. So how does this impact on patients? How does it impact on staffing? How does it impact on obviously the operational support teams within the EFM environments? But again, all of this we can now do, and what we've tried to do is bring the elements that Jason very well presented, outlined, and that Adam produced, and also some of the areas that Karen mentioned as well. Again, we're trying to pull all of that into this one project. Yes, we are starting on a very smallish build at the moment, which is around about 30 million plus. But what we're hoping to do is expand that fairly quickly into at least, and not just in one trust either, but in a number of areas, number of trusts, and number of primary care areas, circa 10 or more, where we can repeat and refine this whole process around the BIM, the CDE, following that golden thread of data into the SEAMS program. But as I said, trying to develop these things so they're not done in isolation, they're done as a collective, and we link it all up and have that collaborative and transparent process. And again, I'm conscious that we're already 5 minutes over time, so I apologise. I'll leave it there. So hopefully, if there's anybody left on the call, we can have questions if anybody wants.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Carl, and thank you very much to all of our presenters today. Apologies that we ran over time a little bit, but I think we will just take a couple of minutes to answer some of the questions in here. So I will start by answering some of the questions that were sent to me. So one of them is saying, do you wait until the end of the project to review your asset data or capture it progressively? No, actually, we do review it and capture it progressively, and we review it with our contractors and our suppliers. And at the last project that we've had, which was the engineering computing building, our contractors, Parametric, have really helped us to map the asset information into the model, and we've used Dynamo to do that. And they've actually supported us in understanding some of those workflows. So it was a really good project. And another question was, do you use some scan to BIM services, or do you develop the models on the project only? So we do use scan to BIM services like point cloud surveys when we do scanning for new projects or refurbishment projects. We scan the building using point cloud surveys, for example. For our existing buildings, we develop the models retrospectively using more simpler tools like just normal laser scanners, and that helps us to validate the plans that we've got, change what needs to be changed, and then build the models based on those surveys, really. So additional questions. So off to the panel, can you see the question section, please? And would you like to see if there's a question for you?
So there are questions for Adam, Karen, Jonathan, and yes. So there are questions in the panel. I don't know if you as panelists can see them. You should be able to.
Yes. So Adam or Karen, could you please have a look at the question section and answer a couple of them, please?
I will. Just let me put through them. Sorry. Okay.
I could start answering some, Karen, in the interim. I've got a question from Sean Farrell about we find that ops and facilities are not used to being called into early meetings, so is a cultural change needed? And have we addressed that? Yes, I mean, it's a great point, and I think a lot of the panelists will probably reflect on that. It's a cultural change both sides. I think that I find that when I'm dealing with some colleagues, not all, because when I say this, but some colleagues, FM colleagues, that really the data that's needed to build a building just is huge in comparison to what's maintained, what they need to maintain it, and it puts them off. And I think that's why I'm keen on this simple message. But certainly starting the discussions and having them at early stage is really important.
I've got a question as well, Pam, if you want, or Hadil, if you want me to just pick up one.
Go for it.
Yeah, it's from Richard Freer. Says you said you were steering away from using the term BIM. if you're not using the term BIM, how will other NHS people ever understand that it's about more than construction? I think it's a fair point. We're not avoiding using the term BIM. What we're trying to do is look more at the operational benefit. So more trying to look at the digital agenda across the operational side of the NHS, much as other presenters have spoken about in their own sectors today, rather than focusing on BIM, because I think using the term BIM tends to switch people off from the wider benefit. And I think because the level of understanding is perhaps not there across all parts of the NHS, it tends to be seen in a divisive way rather than in a helpful way. So it's not that we're not going to ever say BIM anymore. It's just that we're trying to sort of get people to understand the wider agenda. You know, there is a huge education and awareness program that's needed here, and we are, you know, as part of the BIM for Health group, that's one of our key roles, is to try and get that out there, really. So I hope that clarifies a little bit what I said.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, Adil, I don't seem to be able to see the questions, or not questions particularly related to me. So I wonder whether you could just tell me.
Could you please read some of them?
Yes, of course. So Karen, you have a question here. Has the use of Python linking to the model's data been looked at? Also, has Dynamo been considered in much the same way?
Yeah, so Python is part of the jigsaw, and I think what we are trying to encourage is not a single way of doing things. So looking at the blend of how technologies can be used together. So I know our digital community of practice, particularly focusing on how they can generate data from the design models. Python is one of those solutions that will allow the export of information coming out.
Okay. Then I have, did you find culturally that the gateways needed to capture the decisions, creating friction where this was not business as usual?
Yes, I mean, I think this is, I think one of the areas that we are now considering is at what level should we be mandating information and what is not mandatory, because you know, sometimes project managers, with the best will in the world, they have a focus on delivering time, cost, quality, and sometimes I think it's probably fair to say, you know, the desire to achieve their outcomes can make it very easy to not deliver the things that perhaps we want them to be focusing and delivering. So there is that cultural change. But I think what we've also seen is our suppliers are coming to us and saying, actually, did you know Project Manager 8, they're not doing what they need to be doing, which is quite interesting. So, but I think it is a cultural change. I think also part of that cultural change is we've got to demonstrate the benefits. So you know, it's doing what I call the boring things, getting the metadata right, and all of these sorts of things are the enablers for much smarter working. But you've got to go through that pain threshold, which I think for everyone is the challenging piece.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Any additional questions? All right. So thank you very much to all of our speakers today, and thank you so much to everyone who attended our webinar today. I hope it's been of benefit to you. Please follow the UKBIMA Alliance YouTube channel and the website, as the presentations will be uploaded there in video and PDF format. and we will be looking forward to hosting further events with you all. So please follow the UKBIMA Alliance websites for upcoming events. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon.